Welcome to the Anti-Architect Podcast. I am your host, Christian Giordano. As president and owner of the design firm Mancini Duffy, I am driven by a quest for learning and radically changing the industry. With this podcast, I'm hoping to improve the industry that I'm so passionate about by taking a critical look at how architects work through a variety of voices and shared experiences. Hello, Anti-Architect Podcast listeners. I am thrilled to welcome Tom Shen as my guest on the Anti-Architect Podcast today in our New York studio. Tom is the president and CEO of Shen, Milsom, and Wilke, known as SM&W. It is a global consulting powerhouse specializing in IT, audiovisual systems, security, acoustics, and medical equipment planning. Founded in 1985 by Tom's father, Fred Shen, Shen, Milsom, and Wilke has become an industry leader in delivering cutting-edge solutions for complex projects worldwide. With a career spanning 30 years, Tom has shaped the firm into one of the most respected engineering firms in the field. Under his leadership, the firm has expanded its reach across diverse sectors, including healthcare, corporate real estate, higher education, transportation, hospitality, and mission-critical facilities. Tom's background in technology systems and infrastructure planning has been the key to bringing a strong client base that stretches across the globe. As president and CEO, he has been the driving force behind their impressive growth, steering the company through industry changes and economic challenges. What sets Tom apart is his focus on innovation, constantly pushing the firm to explore new frontiers in the industry and beyond, always looking for ways of enhancing and diversifying their services to the client's benefit. Tom not only leads in his profession, but also empowers underprivileged children through the USTA Foundation, helping provide scholarships and educational opportunities nationwide. Tom is also a fellow YPOer in the Manhattan Gold chapter. I think that means that you're old,
Yes.
Like I'm now gold, so I get to say
Fellow
that.
gold member.
That's right. Tom, thank you so much for being my guest here on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me, and nice to finally meet you.
Yeah, for sure. So I wanted to start with something that drives me crazy about some of our clients when it comes to some of the services that you guys provide, and kind of define what I'm talking about here, and that's specifically IT, audiovisual systems, and security. Acoustics usually is not an issue. But some clients will say, and they're not necessarily small clients, it can be large clients, they'll say, why do I need to hire a consultant to do these services? Our IT department will just handle it, or we'll just do it when the contractor's installing it.
Right.
And this never works, as you know.
Yeah.
So my question is, what's your take on this, and how do we educate clients to the value of the services that you provide?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, a lot of the larger enterprise clients that we work with, they have very robust internal IT departments that manage their IT systems, their AV, and their security, all of their technology on a day in and day out basis. They have their day jobs, right? And a lot of those day jobs are managing all of those systems across multiple offices, across global offices in some cases. And usually when we get involved in a project, there's a capital project of some sort. So it involves an architectural component to renovate or expand or build a new facility. And a lot of these internal IT groups are focused more on the day in and day out management of those facilities. And we like working with sophisticated clients. We like working with clients that have these internal teams that really know what they want and know how to use the technology. I think where we provide value is coming in with an objective viewpoint in assessing a situation, understanding the needs of our client, and looking at things independently without any direct influence from a manufacturer or from a contracting perspective. We differ ourselves from let's say a design build firm, a contractor, right, that provides, let's say, procurement and installation services, in that we're completely objective and independent from those influences, right? Yeah. So we don't have a warehouse full of Samsung video displays that we want to push onto a solution. What we do is we look at things very objectively, and we assess the needs. We understand the current environment. We ask our clients lots of questions about, their current use of technology, what keeps them up at night, what's working well, where do they see, needs for improvement. And then from there, we develop a series of recommendations. And it's always a partnership with our clients. We don't look at things and say, we want to, come up with a design and just kind of pitch it your way. We see this as a team development and a partnership. Our clients know their business better than anyone, right? So we don't come in saying, oh, we know everything. We want to learn, right? And we see this always as a partnership together with our clients. So we develop our recommendations in concert with our clients, and we help to develop good solutions that are, again, serving their needs primarily. That's first and foremost. And that meet budgetary requirements. Sometimes there's procurement challenges where you can't get product to the site and into a project quickly, so we have to double check availability. So our recommendations are based on so many different aspects and our knowledge of the industry as a whole. We get to work on so many different projects in different regions of the world, and all of that experience helps us to develop really strong recommendations. And again, everything is very objective. Yeah. Our goal is to just meet the needs of our client, meet their budgetary requirements, and make sure that we can get those products in on time. And then ultimately, when those products get procured through, some form of a contractor or an integrator, we want to make sure that that integration goes as smoothly and with the highest level of quality as possible to our standards and expectations. And we stay on top of those contractors. We are doing all that coordination with the general contractors, very much like what you guys do on the architectural side. And we want to ensure that that build is, again, meeting that very, very high quality, and that we're, making sure that we're staying on top of them, making sure that they're not, kind of taking advantage of our clients and Sure. hitting them up for all kinds of additional services that aren't justified. It's a form of checks and balances, and it's always best when we're involved early on the project and can see the entire thing through to completion. Final punch list, final checkouts, full systems turnover. So we always start our projects with the same team and end those projects with the same team. Nice. Right, having that consistency from start to finish, which could take years sometimes, is the best way to ensure a really successful project.
Yeah, you mentioned budget. What happens when the client doesn't really know their budget for things like AV, IT, security? Yeah, how do you establish a budget with them?
Well, there's so many different options, right? There's never one singular solution, especially when it comes to AV. Sometimes on the IT side with the physical infrastructure and cable plant, there are just your basic needs and requirements that have to be met for connectivity. Yes, there are different levels of performance that we can give options for, but there aren't as many options as there are with, let's say, AV technology or even security for that matter. Mm-hmm. So what we want to do is, again, assess needs. We look at the current use of technology. We identify opportunities for enhancements or improvements in performance, and then we inform our clients through that program development of what those associated costs will be. Right? So it's kind of like a Chinese menu of options, if you will. And sometimes they have no idea what the budget should be. And sometimes a lot of our projects, when we get involved, there is a set budget. But sometimes those budgets are based on square footage. Oh, we think it should be $10 a square foot for technology. It's hard to really assess what things should be on a per square foot basis, because sometimes there's a concentrated need for technology in a certain area of program, right? Yeah. You have a space that has a high concentration of technology, and then you have other areas of a program that have very little, if no technology. So pricing things on a per square foot basis is usually not the right way to do things. And again, we provide our clients with a lot of different options and help them establish a budget if one is not pre-established.
Okay. Are there, and I'm kind of going out of order of my questions just because I'm thinking of things as things that come up in our projects, right? There's always, especially on the AV side, we'll have clients that say, I don't want anything complicated. I don't want, a whatever system that's going to work with my blinds that are going to lower automatically when I set this setting. And I don't want that. I want to be able to turn, have a conference call and plug in and be simple. And then it always gets complicated.
Right.
It's always
hopefully not too complicated.
Is there what are some of the simpler solutions to those kind of things?
Yeah,
I tell you, we have Logitech in our office, and it works pretty great.
Yeah.
It really does.
And Logitech, is a manufacturer that's come a long way over the years. They've kind of gone from the consumer side to now the commercial market and everything in between, what we call prosumer. And ease of use is always the most important thing, right? When we go through our assessment of technology needs and meet with our clients to understand their needs, we want to understand what their support resources are to manage the technology. In some cases, we have clients that have no technology team whatsoever, and everything needs to be kind of self-sufficient, automated, really easy to use, very intuitive. And sometimes, highly sophisticated systems are not the right solution for those clients. So we want to make sure that things are easy to use, reliable, intuitive. Those control systems where you touch a button and everything kind of turns on. Automation is really an important component to this.
Yeah.
Automated systems that will turn on by themselves and configure themselves. So if you want to start a Zoom call, kind of a one-button touch to get everything turned on. The display, the microphones, the camera controls, the mute button pops up, and then the call can start. And then, one simple button to end a call. Right. But then there's also clients that have very sophisticated systems where they want to have much more capabilities than just simple on-off and automation. Some of our clients, they have technology teams that can manage that technology even when in use. So we have complex rooms that might be, highly like an event space where you have support that can manage that technology, and then everything in between. But making sure we understand the needs of our clients and what their levels of internal support may be are very, very important into driving them to the right solution.
Yeah, interesting. I never really thought about the internal support part.
Yeah. A lot of
you're
these IT
walking
teams,
away, and someone's got to maintain it or not.
Deal with these systems on a day in and day out basis, and reliability is key for that.
Yeah.
And then good service and support from the integration side. So after we walk away, and there's 90 days down the road, what we like to do is come back and do kind of a check-in on our clients, usually 90 days, and then 6 months, and then even a year after the day one kind of installation, just to see how things are going. And that's a service that we don't charge for, right? We want to check in, make sure our clients are doing well, and that they're in good hands, and that the systems are operating as expected. Usually there are a couple things that need to be kind of buttoned up and tidied up, but usually it's a good way to check in and see how things are going. And then if tweaks need to be made, we bring in the right resources to do that.
Interesting. So I've known quite a few people whose fathers have founded companies. That's a big YPO thing. And from the outside, until I was in YPO, it always looked like, oh, jackpot, great, good for the next generation kind of stuff. But the more I've learned about kind of how companies evolve and family businesses and how they morph and change, there's a tremendous amount of pressure that comes with sort of the next generation of a company taking over. And I don't envy that at all. It's a big deal. It's a big thing. So growing up with your father as the founder of the company, how did that shape kind of, your leadership style today?
Yeah, I mean, I came into the business at the very, very entry level. Just to kind of go back a little bit, the history of how my father started the company actually back in 1986. He used to be a partner at one of our competitors. I'll kind of keep that anonymous for right now, but he was a partner there, kind of the senior partner, had been working there for many, many years. And in that firm, that founder's family member joined the firm and ultimately was appointed to eventually take over the firm. And my father was kind of promised, additional equity over the years and being able to buy into the partnership and take over. But plans had changed when this founder's family member joined the business. And that was the impetus to actually lead my father to leave the business and start his own company. So he started the firm back in 1986 with Dennis Milsom. And I joined the firm in 1994, kind of straight out of college. And because of the history where my father came from, he was very, very sensitive to nepotism, as you can imagine, right? And he said, you're going to join the firm, and this is an opportunity for you, but you don't have any experience coming in the door here. And what we do is highly specialized. A lot of engineering that goes into what we do. You can't just come in here and run the show. Of course not. I mean, I came in straight out of college with no experience. So I learned the ropes. I started at the very, very entry level. And for the first, I would say, almost half of my career, at least for the first 10 years or so, my father used to tell me, just remember, you have not the right last name, you have the wrong last name. And all eyes are going to be on you. And you have to prove yourself, right? Nothing is going to be handed to you. Don't carry any sense of entitlement. You're going to have to prove yourself and work hard. And if anything, I'm going to be harder on you than I am with other people because I don't want to be accused of nepotism. So, I took that to heart, and I think I developed a very strong work ethic as a result. I came in with a very humble approach. I didn't know anything, right? And I was there to learn. So I worked in many different aspects of the company. I mean, initially, I think I was doing some acoustical work and doing noise studies on the side of the LIE and doing sound studies, environmental, interior noise studies. And I was doing a lot of the grunt work. I started doing some AutoCAD drafting back then. And I learned the documentation side of things. I learned the IT side of what we do. And I was learning all aspects of the business from my colleagues. And it was great. It was a great learning opportunity. And the technology side of the business is what I found most interest in. And I started becoming involved in projects and eventually managing projects, single discipline projects, and then eventually multidiscipline projects. So I took on more and more responsibility over the years. I kind of did that with tact. I made sure I wasn't elbowing people out of the way. Knowing that my father was always the guy in the corner office, he gave me a lot of mentorship.
That's great.
It was wonderful to work with him for 20 plus years. I have to say the first 10 were kind of difficult. It's not easy coming into a family business, but again, it really taught me a lot in terms of developing a very strong work ethic and not having any sense of entitlement, not having anything that I would expect to be handed to me. I always had to work hard for what I achieved and to gain additional responsibilities. I did put my hand up a lot. But again, I didn't have any sense of entitlement with that. And as I started further into my career, I took on more and more challenges. I eventually left New York, which is our headquarters, and I went out to San Francisco and I managed our office out there for 7 years. It was an office that really wasn't performing quite well, and I turned things around. And it was an opportunity to kind of get out of my dad's shadow for a few years. He was always based in New York. So I ran San Francisco and I grew our office there over the course of 7 years.
Wow.
I landed some of the largest projects and that the firm ever worked on, and we were a very profitable office, very successful. And then I came back to New York when my dad told me that he was ready to kind of ease into some kind of a retirement. He was a very driven type A person, so I knew he would never fully retire, but he wanted to scale back a little bit. And he felt that I should be kind of back in New York. And that's when I became our managing partner and then eventually our president and CEO.
Wow.
And then sadly, not long after that, only about 2 years after that, he passed away suddenly.
Sorry to hear.
He died, kind of a massive stroke just instantly without any warning. And it was very tough on me. Again, he was, kind of my mentor. And I would have to say that the last, 5 to 10 years that I got to work with him, we developed a very close, tight relationship. And it was wonderful.
Yeah, sure.
It was a relationship of not so much at that point mentorship, but more just, collegial and very respectful and very professional. And loving as well. I learned so much from him, and I really cherish all that time that I got to spend with him. It was great.
Amazing. That's a beautiful story.
Thank you. And I think, sorry, just to keep going here for a second, I think that I run the company today a little bit differently than...
That was actually going to be my next question.
So differently than he did, right? So, my dad was the founder. He was always the corner office guy, sitting in the corner office, and... not that he was out of touch with, some of, let's say, the junior folks or kind of entry level, lower level positions, but I don't think he could relate to them as I can.
Right.
Having held just about every position in the firm, I've been in their shoes.
Yeah.
I know what they deal with on a day in and day out basis. I understand those challenges.
Yeah.
My door is always open. I sit in the corner office today, but my door is always open. And I feel like I'm very engaged with my entire team. And that's across the entire firm. Right? We have 230 somewhat people working for us at this point. I think I know just about every single person by name, and I have, some kind of relationship with every person. I make it a point to get to know my people, and I'm approachable.
Yeah.
Right. I'm someone who wants to help people through challenges and wants to give advice where I can and impart some wisdom if possible. So I do run things a little bit differently than the way that my dad ran things for many, many years. Yeah. And I think as a result, our team is highly collaborative and very engaged, and we all have a very common goal. And the culture across the firm is very, very strong as a result.
Yeah, I know that. And so how do you manage your day to day? What do you see yourself? People ask me all the time, what do you do? And it's very difficult for me to actually answer that question. I don't quite know what I do other than answer emails.
Right.
But so how would you define what you do at the company?
Yeah, I think like you, it's hard to say these are my direct responsibilities.
Right.
But I think that making sure that our clients are being satisfied is one thing. Putting out fires, which is the unfortunate side of things. There's always some kind of fire brewing somewhere, well. Right? I'm sure you know that very well, unfortunately. And making sure that our clients feel like they're being cared for and that we're meeting their expectations. That's certainly one part of it. So the client-facing side of it is a very big aspect of what I do. So it's client outreach and being involved in business development and maintaining and growing relationships, starting new relationships. And then on the internal side, making sure that our teams are delivering at the highest level possible, that we're, again, meeting all of our client expectations, but at the same time, also not over-earning on things, right? We still want to maintain our profitability and make sure that we're not, exceeding fees, or if we are exceeding fees, why are we doing that?
Right.
And examining things closely, right? Understanding what happened on a project where, we underestimated something perhaps and we over-earned on something. So looking at the financial aspect of it. I'm fortunate that we have a very strong executive team. My CFO is wonderful. Our COO, Rob Haddad, who I think you've met, he's great as well. So Rob deals with a lot of the day in and day out, but then he reports up to me on things that I need to kind of just insert myself into. And some of those are strategic things. Some of those are HR related. It's all aspects of it. All right. I feel like I'm very hands-on. And I like to be involved. I like to be aware of things, but I also let people do what they need to do, right? I think it's important to be able to kind of remove yourself from too much of the minutia and not get buried down in all the details and let your people do what they need to do. These are the reasons why you hired them. These are capable folks that can do these things. And you have to trust them and empower them to make those decisions sometimes without your direct involvement in everything. Otherwise, there's just not enough time in the day for that.
Yeah. Have you gotten better at that over time? Is that something you were good at from the beginning?
No, I think I have. I think I have. It was a learning process, right?
Yeah.
I was, again, growing up in the business, I was very, very hands-on. So I knew like I could do it all if I needed to. Yeah. But being able to delegate, being able to put people into responsible positions and not having to be involved in every single thing, it was a learning process. So you had to learn to let go a little bit, learn how to trust people.
I agree.
Right? Otherwise, you can't focus on the big picture, right? You're just caught too much in the weeds, and you can't focus on some of the bigger things that really affect the business in terms of strategy and growth.
Yeah, I fully admit all the time. I try to say that to the staff all the time. I'm getting better at that because a lot of times I'll say like, I'll just do that proposal or I'll just do this, that kind of thing. And it takes a long time to stop getting in the weeds or getting involved in everything. And it's not because I think I can do something better or faster or whatever than anyone else. I was been so used to doing it all.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And then as you grow a company, it becomes very difficult to kind of step back and continue that growth unless you have everybody else, kind of helping along the way. So. Yeah, pretty interesting. Have you, since you've taken over the company, has it scaled? Have you grown since?
Yeah, we've grown. I wouldn't say that we're growing leaps and bounds, but we're growing steadily. And
Okay.
we had some challenges along the way, like many other firms in our industry. With COVID and things kind of scaling back a little bit, but we rebounded very, very strong.
Great.
And we've been growing, I would say, over the last 3 years at a higher rate than we have probably in the history of the firm.
Oh, wow.
We have the highest backlog that we have ever had historically across the firm, highest level of sales as well that build that backlog.
Wow.
So we're growing at a rate now much more steadily than we have ever in the history of the firm, which I think is, again, a testament to not necessarily my leadership. I don't like to take credit for all of that, but really the team that I have in place. I'm very lucky. I'm very fortunate to surround myself with very competent, capable folks that really know what they need to do to help grow our business. So I kind of just move the strings a little bit here and there, but no, it's we're very fortunate to be in the position that we're in, and we've been growing steadily.
Nice, that's great.
Yeah.
So if you had to pick one thing, what annoys you about working with architects?
I don't know if there's anything annoying about working with architects. Of course, I say that to you being an architect.
That's fine.
But no, we do face some challenges every now and then. I think that there's benefit to getting a firm like ours on the consulting side involved early on a project. I'm sure you've heard that many times before. Getting involved earlier than later is always an advantage. It's sometimes tough being brought into a project midstream. The project's already in design development, and then we get involved in a project, and then we have to say, hang on a second, your floor plan's already set, but these equipment rooms are not in the right location, or they're not big enough, or if you reuse these spaces, there's going to be a compromise, and it's not providing the flexibility. So I think being involved early in the planning process is really key, and I think it's advantageous to our clients, our mutual clients, advantageous to you guys as the architects, where we can help inform some of the space planning early on, and make sure that technology, especially, is not an afterthought. So sometimes convincing the architects and making them understand that is a challenge. I would say that's probably our biggest challenge, because sometimes, we're not brought into a project until really, really late in the game, and then it becomes a big challenge.
It's hard on our end too, because
what
what'll happen is, we propose for the project, and we'll always say, we need AV, IT, security, that kind of thing. And a lot of times that'll be, well, let's not go out and get that yet until we've defined what the scope is, because a lot of clients, or maybe it's project managers, whoever it is, they're looking for, a total cost, right? And it's very difficult to provide a client with a total cost of our services, right? Not really knowing what the scope of the project is.
Exactly.
Sure, per square foot, I get it. There's a certain size project and it's per square foot, and there's a formula to do it, but that doesn't necessarily equate to actual dollars. And so we end up purposely holding back some of the, we'll bring structural and MEP on right away, but we'll hold back on a lot of the other stuff because it's, well, we don't know what it is. Let's wait so we can get a firm price from them. And I think that actually hurts the project at the end of the day.
Sometimes it does. I mean, with some of the architects that we work very closely with, that, we get a lot of repeat business from them. The relationship that we have with them is such where they may not bring us in from a contractual basis super early in a project, but they may reach out to us and say, hey, we're involved in something. We're just getting underway. This is the building, this is the footprint, these are the program spaces that we're involved with. Can you, just give us, a rough idea of either budget or space planning needs, what should we be doing? And we're happy to provide that input.
Yeah.
And then if we can get involved in the project, ultimately, obviously the better. But yeah, getting involved as early as possible. It's almost never too early to involve us in something. We may not be heavily involved in, site planning, but there could be, on the acoustic side, environmental conditions that we deal with, with site planning, especially in a large campus. There could be infrastructure requirements in terms of bringing services into a facility. Early involvement is always better.
For sure. But it's funny, we just talked about that with, the furniture side of things. Same thing, right? I've talked about that with the construction side of things. It's always the earlier the better. The more we can kind of work together to figure out a solution. I would argue it's actually saves the client money and time ultimately at the end. So you're not going back and redoing things or rebudgeting things.
Yeah. I was just going to add that, another challenging part of working with architects is managing expectations, of course. But, we're usually following your lead as, the architect. You're designing the spaces, and then we have to take your spaces and integrate components into them, usually the technology components. And sometimes we're not given a lot of time to get that done. So if you have, a 100% DD package that's going out in 3 weeks, you give us the updated backgrounds and you expect us to, put everything in there, and then the backgrounds change because you're working in real time and we're working, let's say, in BIM 360, and things change all of a sudden, the wall moves and we have to move everything. So keeping up with changes is not easy.
Yeah.
But, we try to, be as communicative with our clients and hope that they communicate with us. And when I say clients, architectural clients, so that they communicate changes to us so that we could be as aware of those things as quickly as possible, so we can jump on them, so we're not there at the last hour trying to put all of our information in, and we can still do the right level of quality control before any kind of deliverable issuance.
Yeah, it's a tough balance. Trust me, I get it, because we don't want to issue those backgrounds last minute either. But there's always so many changes and evolutions to things.
Yeah.
How have you seen the relationship, not only with architects and firms like yours, change over the course of your career, but just in general, in the process in general?
I think that the process has gotten better. I think that architects that we work with on a regular basis, they really understand our process, and it's a pretty synthesized process that we follow with them. We understand their needs and understand, for instance, the level of detail that we need to provide to make sure that the package is complete and it's fully coordinated. So I think that process has improved. Working in BIM these days versus 2D and AutoCAD, I think has also helped with some of that coordination.
Sure.
Elevations are created kind of automatically using BIM, and I think that the process of our documentation has gotten much more smooth. We were very early adopters of 3D technology.
Okay.
Way back even 20 years ago. So I think that our automation of that has helped a lot. Building families and 3D objects that can just be inserted into a model has streamlined that process where you're not creating everything from scratch. And then working in 360 in a live model has its challenges, but its advantages as well, right? From a clash detection standpoint, you could see immediately where things may be impacted, but also keeping up with those changes becomes a big challenge. So I think that the documentation evolution has gotten better and more streamlined from our relationship with architects. And then on the technology side, I think that things have gotten more sophisticated but easier also. You think back like 20 years ago about a video conference system and a room that needed to have video conferencing, and it was so damn complicated, right? It wasn't an IP-based solution where you plug in a network device, a network camera, and then you're all of a sudden online and you can just connect to another location. It used to be very, very complicated and very expensive too. And then it needed all the management. You couldn't just have someone click a button to get on a call. You needed to call someone in to do that. So I think that technology has helped make our solutions easier and more consumable, and easier to design and deploy.
Yeah. So you guys have a tremendous amount of offices, over 230 employees. You're all over the world. So I listed a bunch here, New York, Beijing, Chicago, Denver, Philly, London, Houston, Hong Kong, Singapore, Washington, D.C. How did all that come about? Were they acquisitions? Did they all kind of happen naturally? And then how do you get to them? How do you manage them as the CEO of the whole company?
Our growth has been primarily organic. In most cases, a project or two or three has taken us into a region. We started obviously in New York. I think our first branch office might have been Washington, D.C. We're working on a lot of law firms down in D.C. And we felt that we needed to have some presence there. And that's how kind of things grew organically across the firm. So we grew initially across the States, and then we established a hub in Asia, in Hong Kong, and then from there branched into mainland China, into Southeast Asia and Singapore. But primarily projects and our clients took us to those locations, and the growth has been organic. So we would need to find someone kind of local to that region, hire that first person, right? Trust that person to help grow the team there with support from our main office in New York. I've had heavy involvement in growing a lot of these different offices. A lot of these offices started as 1 or 2 man shows, and then they've grown into 20 and 30 person teams. Wow. So it's generally projects that took us there, and organic growth. We've had small acquisitions along the way, but those acquisitions were really to expand into our service offerings more than into a regional presence. We haven't purchased a firm that was in, let's say, on the West Coast that brought us there. So it's really been organic growth.
Okay. And do you get to the offices
as far
on
as
a regular basis?
I'm
asking for a friend.
I do.
As someone who now has a bunch of offices all over the place.
Right. So
how the hell do you do that?
14 offices around the world. I try to get out to each office a few times a year. It's not easy. Usually towards the end of the year, I like to visit our offices and visit with our staff. It's a good way to kind of summarize the year for them. I kind of do a financial review with them and talk about goals that were either accomplished or not accomplished that we had set forth, the year prior or earlier in the year, and then we talk about goals for the next year going ahead. So usually my December is crazy with travel. I just actually booked a lot of my year-end travel. I'm basically not in New York for the almost entire month of December. And I try to spend time with each office. So it's usually a full day in that office, together with some kind of celebratory dinner or lunch with the team.
Okay.
So I work my way across the U.S. and then I usually fly to London and spend time there. And then also Asia, right? So in Asia, I always try to make my way to Hong Kong because that's the hub for us in Asia, and my director for our Asia operations is based there. Okay. But then I usually go to China and then into to Singapore as well. So I rack up a lot of miles as a result. But I think the FaceTime is really important with the team. The connection to me, the ability for our team members to have that direct interface with me, to understand where they fit into the puzzle, so to say. I think it's really important. We never want our team to work in silos. I think one good thing that came out of the pandemic in terms of working kind of remotely is our ability to communicate more effectively internally across the firm and work more seamlessly, more collaboratively, and to get to know your colleagues. But I think that, I am engaged with all of our team members because I spend time with them, because I know them. And I think that that's really important as a CEO. Yeah,
I agree. What are just describe some of the projects that you've worked on, some of the landmark projects, some of your current projects, if you can. What of all of the disciplines that you're in, what projects do you like? Is it acoustics that you like doing more? Is it, what are your kind of...
Acoustics was the foundation of our business, and it's still very much so are the roots of what we do. We grew into technology pretty quickly, with AV, then expanding into IT, and then it's been really organic, all of that growth into these other divisions of technology. I'd say right now, one of our primary focuses is healthcare. A couple of years ago, when things with the economy started to slip a little bit, and then the pandemic happened, I was looking at the global economy. What's going to happen to our business as a result of what's happening to the economy? And I found that institutional work should be the focus, because it's primarily the sustainable part of any economy is, the institutional work, whether it's healthcare or higher ed. That's generally where funding continues to be. People still need to be educated. They continue to get sick and age. Yep. And, we're lucky that strategy has really paid off for us over the last couple of years. So, we expanded into healthcare. We acquired a small firm that does medical equipment planning, and we've grown that division of medical equipment planning and healthcare to be a great business, and it's been our big focus. Okay. So I'd say that healthcare has our most activity. We're fortunate to work with incredible institutions all around the world, whether it's Sloan Kettering or NYU Langone, Sinai, Northwell, all located here in New York. Big institutions down in the Mid-Atlantic, like Inova Health Systems, MD Anderson in Texas. We work on a lot of things overseas as well that usually have some form of a tie back to a Western institution. For instance, MD Anderson is involved in a project that we're doing in the Middle East, or you have projects that are based in Boston that have affiliates in the Middle East or in China for that matter. So healthcare has been a big focus for us. Other institutional work on the higher ed side has been focused as well. We're starting to see more and more needs for corporate work coming back.
Yep.
Not necessarily small office fit outs, but larger enterprise corporate work.
Yep.
We do get our fair share of larger enterprise projects. We stretch across all different aspects of every market. And a lot of it comes down to the technology and being able to tie all of those technologies together.
Sure.
A big advantage of hiring us is that we do all of that coordination internally, right? So if you hire us on, let's say, a healthcare project, and we're handling the IT, AV, security, medical equipment planning, and acoustics.
Yeah.
All of that is coordinated internally.
Yeah.
So instead of an architect contracting potentially 5 different consultants for those services, and you guys having to coordinate with 5 different consultants, we handle all of that internally.
Yeah.
And it's one point of contact that we provide for you and for our client. And like my father used to say, one throat to choke, right?
I like
So
that.
it's a single point of responsibility, and that coordination, which is extensive, right? The coordination between our different disciplines is extensive, but we're fortunate that we can handle all of that internally and provide back a project that's fully coordinated across all those different disciplines.
So let's talk a little bit about your origin story. And I guess my question would be, if you hadn't gone into this business, what do you think you would have done? Did you want to do something else at any point?
Well, I mean, you're in YPO as well, and in YPO, we're surrounded with entrepreneurs and people in finance. I love what I do. I kind of grew up in this business. I don't know anything else other than this business, and I really enjoy what I do. A lot, people ask me, you came into a family business, maybe you were kind of nudged into that direction. Do you have any regrets of that? And I don't. I really enjoy what I do day in and day out. Running this business has its headaches, of course, but I get a lot of satisfaction out of it. And I think that the industry that we're in, the AEC industry, is a fantastic industry. I've met so many unique people and really good people in our industry. And then the clients that we get to work with, meeting so many different types of clients, from large Fortune 500 firms to healthcare institutions to schools and colleges and universities to nonprofits, cultural institutions, and everything in between. It never gets boring. It never gets boring. And I'm not sure if I could see myself doing anything else. I don't ever have the desire to, say, oh, I wish I wasn't in this industry.
Right.
I feel like I've never really said that to myself, which is a blessing. I'm lucky to be in the position that I'm in, and I don't take it for granted.
Yeah. What did you go to college for?
So I initially went to college for acoustical engineering. So this is another kind of funny story. When I was in high school and my father started the firm back in '86, I think I was like a freshman in high school, and my father started the business as an acoustical consulting firm. And, he asked me, hey, do you want to come into the business, one day? I was like, I'd love to have you here alongside of me. And I said, sure. Yeah. I'd love to join the business one day. So I started looking into colleges that had a engineering program focused on acoustics and vibration. And back then in the 80s, there were only a few colleges that actually offered that program. Penn State University was one.
Okay.
They have an architectural acoustics program. University of Hartford was another. MIT was another. And, I applied to a bunch of colleges for an engineering degree, and I was accepted into Penn State, and I originally thought I was going to go there. I went to orientation at Penn State at the main campus. I sat in on I think it was a freshman calculus class of about 450 kids in the class. It was like a double tier lecture hall. Back then with the technology, they were using an overhead slide projector. Right. And the professor was on a microphone. And I grew up in Westchester. I went to school in Armonk at a public school, small class. I think I graduated with about 100 kids. So my average class size was, 25 or so in a class. And then, walking into that freshman calculus class, I was like, whoa, this is overwhelming. I felt like the environment wasn't for me. So I chose not to go to Penn State. I went to the University of Hartford, and I started in their acoustical engineering program. But unbeknownst to me, that acoustical engineering program was very heavily tied to their School of Music. So, you go to your freshman calculus class, but then, the second half of your day, you're spending time with the School of Music and taking harmonics classes and everything related to music. And I have no musical background. I can barely, hold the beat, so to say. And I felt a little bit like a fish out of water there with that specific program. So I transferred into the College of Engineering Technology.
Okay.
And that's where my focus was, more on the electronic side, microprocessor technology. And it just so happened that our firm was getting into the technology side of consulting as well at that time. So it was actually a good fit.
Amazing.
And it gave me a decent foundation.
That's pretty cool. So let's kind of switch a little bit to the USTA Foundation. You're on the board there. Tell us a little bit about the foundation, why it's important to you. Do you play tennis?
Yeah. So, I grew up playing tennis. I grew up, playing competitively as a junior. Tennis has always been a big part of my life. So my father was on the board of the USTA Foundation before me. He served 10 years on the foundation board. And, it's the mission of our foundation is to provide tennis and education programs for under-resourced kids across the country. Tennis used to be a sport of privilege, kind of like a country club sport, and access to tennis really didn't happen for under-resourced kids. They just didn't have that access, whether it was, equipment or court time or the ability to get tennis lessons and instruction. And the USTA Foundation has really helped to change that and to provide access to tennis for all different types of kids across the country. So I joined the foundation, taking over my father's seat on the board, and I was honored to be able to do that. The head of our foundation had asked me, when my dad had passed, you're heavily involved in tennis, and it seems like you have a lot of the same kind of fundamentals and foundation that your dad has. Would you be interested? And I said, absolutely. Anything I could do to give back would be wonderful. So my involvement has spanned now over the last 8 years with the foundation. And again, we provide this, funding for, not only tennis programs for these under-resourced kids, but also education programs. And that's, getting them, off the streets, so to say, and into programs, after-school programs, summer programs where they can learn tennis, have that exposure to tennis, but also get academic tutoring and guidance, which is really amazing. And that ultimately leads to potential scholarships for college. So it's been really rewarding to be involved in that. I have 2 kids. My older one, who's 15, he actually volunteered at one of these chapters that we support, the foundation supports, up in New Haven, Connecticut. So this past summer, he volunteered for a few weeks up there, teaching tennis to, I think he was teaching to 8 and 9-year-olds, and then also providing academic tutoring. So he, was on the academic side of it as well. And again, having that direct exposure for him, it was great for me to see that and have him have that exposure. But it's a great foundation, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. That's and great. To see the results of what we can do and provide for kids, it's amazing. I've heard stories from some of the kids who've gone through the program to say, the program that the foundation has provided took me off the streets. And I look at some of these other kids who I grew up with that didn't take that opportunity. They had the opportunity, but they didn't choose to take that path, and they ended up in a very different place in life. Yeah. And the opportunities that we're providing are really incredible and life-changing. So it's very rewarding to be a part of that.
So last few minutes here, I'd love to talk about technology. And how you see the future architect engineering collaboration amongst technology going for all of us here? You're obviously we're sitting in our technology lab here. You know, we've invested in our AR VR solutions, and now really turning that more to construction, kind of how we bring our models to site in an AR environment and coordinate that way. 3D printing and all sorts of interesting experimental technologies that we're working on. What are you guys looking for, and what do you see in the acoustic world and the AV-IT world?
Yeah, so I mean, I think some of the AV systems in the corporate environment are becoming highly commoditized. Pretty simple, pretty easy to deploy, pretty affordable, almost out-of-the-box solutions that can be deployed quite easily. And those are Zoom rooms and Teams rooms. Small huddle rooms are pretty easy to deploy. And we're seeing good advancements of technology, AI technology in those areas. Where I think we provide a lot of value is in more complex rooms. So you take a boardroom or a larger meeting room, for example, a room that might have multiple cameras, that might have 20 somewhat participants in the room. Making sure that there's good acoustics in the space is paramount to get really good audio capture and to be able to hear everyone within the room. But also using AI technology for camera switching technology. All right, so if you have a long board table and you have different people speaking at different times, and being able to have the cameras track the participants in the room, track them in a way where it feels natural. Automatic camera switching naturally, so it's not like it jumps from person to person, so that the participants on the other end of the call really feel like they're in the room with you. I think that advancements in technology are really helping to make that happen.
Yeah.
But integrating and deploying a solution like that is not super easy. There's a lot of infrastructure that needs to go in place, a lot of thought about what technology to choose and pick. Camera angles are important, display technologies are important, how to integrate that in properly into the architecture, where again, it doesn't look like an afterthought, where it's really nicely integrated. Those are all kind of key aspects of what we look for. The healthcare environment is another one that is really advancing in terms of AI technology. The amount of technology that we're deploying these days into high-tech operating rooms is incredible. The technology is available to these physicians, these surgeons, where they can leverage that technology for the benefit of the patient ultimately. They can leverage that technology to help the efficiency of how operations and procedures actually happen. A lot of for-profit healthcare institutions, they make their money through procedures, and being able to have more procedures, let's say in an operating room, efficiently, and have that patient turnover, or get a patient into the hospital, have them have their procedure, get them out, and get the next one in. It helps generate revenue. AI technology is helping with a lot of that. It's helping to minimize, medical disruptions, if you will, and mistakes. Machine learning and learning from past data is helping to inform how to do things in terms of medical procedures even better than they would be otherwise.
Sure.
So I think we're seeing a lot of advancements in that. Catching up with the technology, keeping up with that technology is never an easy thing, but we have a great team that's staying on top of this. We keep getting informed from product manufacturers about the next generation of technology. We help to inform some of those next generation technologies as well by
what the marketplace needs,
providing them feedback about what we're seeing as a need, right? So we help to give that information back to product manufacturers, and we, in some cases, co-develop products.
And then anything on the AI front in terms of your business directly? Do you worry that AI is going to take your job? Those silly things that you hear like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's happening anytime soon. We're using AI right now in a bunch of different ways, but we're careful about that. You could tell AI, to write a specification for you, and it will churn something out, but we always have to verify all of that information. So I think learning that you can't just take AI for granted and take it at its face value. You have to really look at something and use AI in a way that it could be verified and checked, because it's not always right. So we use AI to gain some efficiencies with some of our process, to double check things, to do a quality control on something, to get maybe a broad view of something. But then we always, kind of use our own human knowledge to make sure that we're verifying all that information. We're double checking things, because ultimately, we take that responsibility. We're liable for that. And we want to make sure that we're not, risking ourselves by just relying on something that can get us there more quickly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to tell the listeners?
No, just we haven't been able to work together recently, right? I looked at our CRM and our accounting system to say, when's the last time we did work with Mancini Duffy, and it's been a few years.
Yeah.
It's been a few years. I'm glad that you invited me into this podcast. It's great to get to meet you and to know you. And love to have our firms work more closely together.
Absolutely, we have a lot in common. I think more than we realize. So I'd love to work with you as well.
Absolutely.
Much more. Absolutely. So Tom, thank you so much for being my guest here on the Anti-Architect podcast, and telling us all about the firm and your career. And it was great to get to know you.
Likewise. Thank you.
So to read more about Tom, go to their website, which is smwllc.com, and you can find Tom and Tom Shen on LinkedIn.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.